We left off page 34. We're going to discuss the concept of tasalom and also, right? We discussed, like, if you put a mezuzah on a board, on a 2x4, then you attach it to the doorpost, right? And there was no doorpost. There was no doorpost. This is the doorpost. The halacha is it's not a valid mezuzah. Because Torah says you should put the mezuzah on the doorpost. It's not, the doorpost now has a mezuzah. You have to fix the mezuzah to the doorpost. But you have a mezuzah on the doorpost. But you never fixed it to the doorpost. So that you have to remove it, put it back. So if you have a talis with 3 corners, which you're not obligated to put tzitzis, and you put tzitzis on the 3 corners, because they hadn't yet brought you the scissor to cut off the 4th side to create the corner. And then you make tzitzis on the 4th corner. The first 3 are not valid. Because when the Torah says you put tzitzis, al kanfei bigdayin, on the 4-cornered garment, that's where you put tzitzis. So to what did you attach the tzitzis? Not to a garment that's obligated tzitzis. So there you're going to have to remove the tzitzis and put them back on again.
Why? So you make a 4th corner.
Because you put it on.
You have 3 tzitzis already on.
No. If it has 4 corners, so the Torah says in a 4-cornered garment you make tzitzis. Yeah. That's the obligation. But it had 3. Didn't have the 4th corner wasn't cut yet. So you put 3. With the tzitzis you affixed to this beggar, this garment. Were you obligated to? So it's not called tzitzis. Right. So when does it become tzitzis? So it became tzitzis. You didn't affix tzitzis. I mean, it's called strings. It's strings, but it's not tzitzis. Tzitzis are tzitzis if you're obligated to put the strings on the corner. Otherwise, it's not called tzitzis. It's a famous Reb Chaim. The Rambam rules. We rule kasha. Everybody here are experts in Malkus, right? Kasha zoma v'lo kasha rosa. Let's say the court gives a verdict. 2 witnesses testify. Based on the testimony, they give a verdict. And before they actually implement the verdict, the other witnesses come and say, Imoro Yisem. Say, how could you testify such and such? You with us? They're considered conspiring witnesses. And what's the halacha? You do to them what they conspired to do to the ones who they testified against. Right? That's kasher zomam. What happens? Originally they said so-and-so was Mechal Shabbos. They gave the verdict, death penalty, and they put the man to death. And after they put the person to death, other witnesses come and say, how could if you testified you with us, you don't put those two? That's because that's after fact. Kasher zoma v'lo kasher rosa. Okay? So it's a famous Rambam. The Rambam rules that, let's say witnesses testify a person was forewarned and he ate non-kosher. Okay? Court rules malchus. And they give malchus. Other witnesses come and say, how could have you testified that he ate Imaru Yisem? Rambam says, even though he already received the malchus, they're considered conspiring, and you give them malchus. That's the Rambam. So they all, but it's kasher rosa. It's after fact, right? So Reb Chaim says that what is malchus? Malchus is only malchus. What about a person goes and flogs a person? Right? It's called assault. Right? That's all. You assaulted him. It's only called malchus if it's within the context of halacha. Death penalty, dying is dying. But malchus, to be called malchus, it has to be within the context of the halacha that you were deserving it. So even though he was lashed or whipped, that's not called malchus. So therefore, even though it's after fact, but it's considered still in the conspiring stage, therefore it's kasher zomam, and you give them the aid in malchus. Even though physically it's the exact same action, you whipped him as you're supposed to whip him, you make tzitzis on the 3-cornered garment. It's exactly as you would do it on the 4-cornered garment. It's the same string, same knots, everything. And you had a mind lishmo. But factually, the Torah says, never said you had to put tzitzis on this garment. It's not called tzitzis. It may resemble tzitzis, but it's not tzitzis. Mm-hmm. Therefore, what is it? It's not. It's possible. So when you cut the 4th corner, you shape the 4th corner, you have to take off the first 3, put them back on again.
You were going to make it out.
Doesn't make this what your intent is, but factually, at this moment, the garment's not obligated tzitzis. The Torah says, put tzitzis on a 4-cornered garment. Right, that's when it becomes tzitzis. It's a 3-cornered garment. Well, even though you intended to cut a 4th corner, but when you put the tzitzis on, it was a 3-cornered garment. Okay? Like we said, exactly like the mezuzah. Okay. Hayu below shalosh kanofos. That's exactly what we're speaking about. How do you become a lamdan? By bringing other things to elucidate something else that broadens your purview of understanding. Okay. Hayu shalosh kanofos. V'osa ben shalosh tzitzis. It had 3 corners, and he made 3 tzitzis on the 3 corners. V'shuv osa lo konof revi. Then he subsequently cut a 4th corner. V'osa bo tzitzis, and he put tzitzis on the 4th corner. Psula. It's possible. Why? Mishum tasav lo min osui. Because the Torah says you should make tzitzis, not it should come about and be made. Here, when you put the 4th corner, you have tzitzis on the garment, the strings. But did you put them on the garment? The Torah says you must tie it to the garment, to the 4 corners. These tzitzis were never tied to a 4-corner garment. Because when he tied the first 3, it was only 3 corners. The 4th corner didn't exist. So that's Taslo min Osi. We had a case in Sukkah. Do a little review here for David's sake. David Seveloff. It says that if you have schach, which is a branch which is attached to a tree, is schach posel. It's called mechuber. It's attached. What happens if you put schach over the Sukkah and provides shade, and then you cut the branch? After it provides shade, it's not valid. Because the Torah says you must make a sukkah. So that means you put the material on the sukkah which provides shade. What you put on the sukkah was not valid material. Didn't qualify as schach. That's tasav lo min osui. It came about by cutting it. Now, what you had there now became, but you never made the schach. Okay. Let's see, Mishna Berura, shalosh knofos. Afilu mitchilo ila arba kanfos im tzitzis. He says, what about if initially you had 4 corners? When you made the tzitzis on a 4-cornered garment, and then subsequently the 4th corner was torn off, and it was torn off in the way it was round. So if that's the case, the garment is no longer obligated in tzitzis. Correct? This would be similar. I mentioned the Rambam. Rambam's position is you only have to put a mezuzah on a doorway which has a door. If it does not have a door, you're not obligated to put a mezuzah. That's Shitas of Rambam. We don't rule this way. Physical door, a door on a hinge. If it doesn't have a door, you're not obligated to put a mezuzah. Just a doorway, you're not obligated. So the Shach says, according to the Rambam, if let's say you're doing a repair and you take the door off the hinge, you had a mezuzah on that doorpost, and then you put it back on, you have to take off the mezuzah and put the mezuzah back on. Of course, what happened when you took the door off the hinge? It's no longer obligated. So now, when you put the door back on, whatever you do, you've created a doorway which is obligated mezuzah. But Torah says now you must affix it. This mezuzah was what? Was the fix to a door that's obligated. Even though it was one time, but because in the interim it became a non-doorway, because a doorway which is obligated mezuzah only if it has a door, so now it has to be removed, it has to be put back on. So initially you made 4 tzitzis on a 4-cornered garment. Now subsequently one of the corners was torn off and it was rounded. So the garment that you have is what? Is no longer a garment that you're obligated to have tzitzis on. Mm-hmm. And then he fixed the 4th corner, he squares it. Now it's become obligated. But in the interim, what was it? It wasn't obligated. You have to remove the first 3, put them back on.
The regular 4-corner garment also becomes unobligated every night.
Okay, let's talk. Good question. Good question. Moshe is getting better. Okay. You have a question. Okay, so what would you say?
If you did this at night. If you did this drill at night.
Let's say at night you would not be obligated. Okay?
Nothing to do with the beggar. Beggar's still a beggar.
It's still. It is a beggar that's obligated during the daytime. Right? Even now, I'll give you an example, which we once discussed. Okay, you broadening, just to review a little bit. The halacha is, why is a woman absolved from writing a Sefer Torah? And if she writes it's not valid. So the Rambam says, because why does the Torah obligate one to have a text to study from? Since a woman's not obligated to Talmud Torah, she has no obligation. So I once asked the question, why don't we say more simple? It's mitzvah she'eman garoma. Right? Any time-oriented mitzvah, a woman is not obligated. Are you permitted to write a Sefer Torah on Shabbos? You're not permitted to write a Sefer Torah on Shabbos. Or Yom Tov. No, good. But a man is obligated mitzvah is mangrama. A woman is not. So say, the reason why a woman is not obligated in writing Sefer Torah, of course, it's a time-determined mitzvah. Shabbos you're not permitted to write, and Yom Tov you're not permitted to write.
You can write any time, though.
But not on Shabbos and Yom Tov.
But still, it's not like you have to eat matzah on Pesach. You can write it Sefer Torah anytime you want.
What difference does it make? What about Sukkah? 7 days. Let's say Sukkah would be 364 days a year. Would a woman be obligated to sit in the Sukkah? No. Even though it's 364, because it's not 365. Right? Time determines. Right? We once asked this question. So what are you going to say?
The application is all the time. It's just that Shabbos
The obligation is continuous. On Shabbos, you say, are you obligated to write a Sefer Torah? Even now? The answer is yes. Torah doesn't permit you to write. The obligation hasn't changed. Well, mitzvahs mangarami means that every day it's another obligation. I'm obligated to say Shema today. Tomorrow it's another obligation. It's not the same obligation. It's the same mitzvah, but it's a different obligation. Right? The time determines the obligation. Here, what determines the obligation is because you're a Jew. That's what determines the obligation. Except the times you're permitted to write, times you're not permitted to write. That's not mitzvah mangrama. This garment you must put tzitzis on. Right? Except at night, if you wear it, one does not fulfill the mitzvah. If you wear it, you're not in violation of wearing a four-corner garment without tzitzis. But it is a garment that during the daytime you must have tzitzis. Okay? Therefore, that's the reason why it's not tasalum and osui.
So what if you have a night job? Your job is at night time. You work from 8 o'clock at night to 8 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
You sleep.
And it's only dawn is at 10. Okay, so what are you
I
asking?
understand what you're saying. So that's your day. Your night is your day. It's a day garment for you.
What do you do with that?
You just
Alan.
have your own different schedule.
Okay.
No, it's like going to Israel on a plane.
I consider this gold. Okay? Therefore what? It's a day. Day is day and night is night. You know, at the time of the Churban, the Navi says they call day night and night day. Why? Because I work in the post office. Okay, I got it. You know, they just raised the price of the stamp. Okay.
Do you still get the answer to that question?
There's certain question, you know, the Gemara says in Shavuos that when a Talmud asks certain questions and you answer that kind of question, you know, you become disqualified as a dayan. Because when you start thinking at that level, forget about it.
You become disqualified as a farmer.
Exactly.
I mean, let's be clear.
If it was a bad question, you would have said something.
It was a bad question. It was a very
Now,
bad
when
question.
you're done Shabbos,
Okay.
So, Rabbi, I mean, we do have a concept that one can interrupt and then continue. So, for instance, taking off tefillin to do type 1 bodily function, it's not considered an interruption. right?
Okay.
Taking off a talus, provided you have in mind.
Because you're permitted to wear the towels even in that situation. That's why. If a person does his bodily functions and you take your tefillin off, you put them back on, you must say a bracha, regardless as much as you had in mind. Correct?
You can't wear it.
Because you're not permitted to wear the tefillin in that state. So that's a termination of previous moment to the next moment.
So what
It's like person has in mind, says Bar Priyagov in the middle of a meal. He says, after Birchas HaMazon, I'm going to continue drinking wine. Right? The halach is you have to say another Bar Priyagov. Why? Because Birchas HaMazon means that whatever you've been doing has come to an end, and anything afterwards it's a new beginning. Same idea. Okay.
I want to check my mezuzot. Okay?
And you take them off with the mind to put them back.
But I take them, and it's going to take a half an hour, and I don't have to make another
Correct,
call.
correct.
Okay, so we can see that this door, while I'm in the busy middle of checking, has no mezuzah on it.
Yeah, but the door's still obligated in mezuzah. The doorway's still obligated in mezuzah. Let's say you repair the doorpost, and you have to remove it and put it back on.
Then
Right? Then it's a hefsek, no question. When you put the mezuzah, because you're putting on a new doorpost.
Even if I had in mind.
Even if you had in mind, doesn't make a difference. Doesn't exist. The doorpost doesn't exist. Because whatever this was associated, identified with it no longer exists. It's like you created a new reality.
Even if you're just replacing the piece of wood.
No, but by tape, sometimes you can replace a piece of wood, but there's still a doorpost. Until you took all, there is no doorpost.
I thought we were talking about taking off the door according to the Rambam.
According to Rambam, same thing.
I just need to do a quick repair.
Doesn't make a difference.
Putting it right back.
Doesn't make a difference. Doesn't make a difference. You're going to have to say another bracha when you put that mezuzah back on. The same reason. It's like saying Birchas Hamazon. But you had in mind. It's irrelevant what you had in mind. That situation came to an end. There's a new beginning. Okay? So he says, even if initially you put it on the four-corner garment, then subsequently the fourth corner tears off, and then you reshape the fourth corner. The first three are no longer valid. Okay? They have to be undone and retied. Sholosh tzitzis lavdaf kshas gimel tzitzis shenase harov bipsul. Dahainu korb shenases ba'arba el afilu lo kosher el kesher echod im chulyoso v'akach hishlem arba kanfos. Nami poso. Osa kesher. Now, let's say a person, very often people's tzitzis unravel. You know, you have so many string, so many times you wrap it around, and you make so many knots, you have 10 knots. Let's say they become undone. Are you permitted to say bracha on that talus?
Partially.
Let's say 3/4 of each corner is undone. Are you permitted to say a bracha? You're permitted to say a bracha.
But you just said like it's a bow. And
Knot, it has to be a double knot.
Double knot.
Once you make the double knot, that's called tzitzis.
All
And
the
this-
other
and
loops and
that only perfects and makes it a more complete. That makes it a more complete mitzvah. But in terms of the basic obligation, already fulfilled it. So the Chofetz Chaim says, what happens if you put the first, there was a three corners, you just put the string in and you knotted it. You did nothing more than that. And before you started to do the other knots and twists and whatever it be, you cut the fourth corner. It's possible. Because since initially when you tied it to that corner, it wasn't obligated, it's taslo menoso. It's not a valid insertion or tying, so it has to be undone, start over here. This is very important. People today, very few people make tzitzis on their own. They buy ready-made tzitzis. But you know, when you tie the tzitzis, it has to be tied for the sake of mitzvah. You have to say l'shem mitzvah tzitzis. Very often, a person that is not thinking, he'll put it through the hole, the four strings, and he'll tie the first double knot, and then he didn't say l'shem mitzvah tzitzis. All the rest will say l'shem mitzvah tzitzis. It's not valid. It's not valid, even because since the initial insertion and the tying was not for the sake of mitzvah tzitzis, it's not a valid tying. It's like a person writes Sefer Torah, doesn't write say l'shem mitzvah, doesn't write for the sake of the mitzvah of Sefer Torah. No, the main thing, you should continue.
It's like putting up
Each corner, you have to, when you start, you have to say l'shem mitzvah tzitzis. The first knot. Factually, we do all of them. Every time you tie it, another double knot, you say l'shem mitzvah tzitzis. No, you fulfill it immediately. Oh, you mean the fourth? But it's the process. It's the process. You have to have it all the way through. Correct.
If you just put strings in
Without thinking anything.
put strings
It's not valid. It's not a valid garment.
You have to start. You put them in with thinking that the tzitzis.
And you say, I'm doing this for the sake of the mitzvah of tzitzis.
How often do you have?
By tzitzis, even if you have it once, we hold la aloha. As long as you start with lishma, even if you don't even think it, we say a person's mindset it really goes back to where he began. Right? But to make sure to do it properly, every time we put it in the corner, even every time we do the double knot, we say l'shem mitzvah tzitzis. Right? To do it totally proper, correctly. Okay, let's see the Mesillas Yesharim.